After the failure that was Need for Speed Undercover and the poor sales of Need for Speed Shift, the series was in trouble. Hot Pursuit had sold well, but it was clear that the next game had to do something special to keep the series relevant. The duty of the next Need for Speed game fell to Black Box. Black Box, the former kings of the arcade racing scene, were nervous. Undercover was received very poorly, and they knew they had to do something new, bold, daring, and most importantly, good. Black Box began development on Need for Speed: The Run. You likely already know what happened next. Poor reviews, bad sales, but I wanted to set out to figure out exactly why The Run failed, and is it as bad as everyone thinks? The Run was created with one idea: to further embrace the seriousness and edginess that the series had newly found. EA Games president Frank Gibbo said The Run was going to be an edgier experience story-wise. And in an interview with PlayStation blog, project manager Darren Profonic stated, "Imagine a Michael Bay summer action driving movie and that you get to play it. That's our vision. We want to create a playable summer blockbuster." Not just content with saying how much they wanted it to be like a Michael Bay movie, the devs went one step further. As part of a promotional campaign with Michael Bay himself, Michael Bay directed and published a promotional trailer of The Run. You can go see it online, and it was unlocked via sharing and liking on Facebook, which is really dates this game. The team at Black Box set lofty expectations, and initially, like most summer blockbusters, it looked the part, primarily thanks to the new engine they were pioneering, Frostbite 2. But it wouldn't take long before the cracks started to show. Built in Frostbite 2, The Run was the first game built using the engine that wasn't a shooter. Black Box apparently spending most of their development time just trying to make the engine work. I sure hope that time sink doesn't come back to bite them and prevent them from adding content or anything like that. Black Box were under the pump. They had released 4 games in just a 2-year time span: Skate 2, Skate 3, Need for Speed World, and the upcoming The Run. And it's pretty clear the impact crunch had on this game. But I digress. Enough about what happened behind the scenes. What is the game actually like? We open to our new hero Jack being crushed in a car compactor, in this predicament thanks to owing major debts to the mob. Seems like the gritty Michael Bay story they all wanted is off to a great start. We escape thanks to a new mechanic to the Need for Speed series, QTEs, or Quick Time Events. I don't really mind QTEs so much nowadays, but there certainly was a period in gaming a few years ago where they felt inescapable. The thought of, why is this a QTE? I just want to play the game, is still fresh in my mind, as I'm sure it is with many gamers. However, The Run makes pretty good uses of QTEs throughout the story. Not much of what you do in Quick Time Events could easily be swapped to a regular gameplay section. Jack running and jumping through city streets would be pretty jarring. Not saying it wouldn't be cool, but the time and effort that would be required to make a proper on-foot control scheme play well is time they did not have. Anyway, we're out of the car and it's time to speed off to safety. Or rather, it would be if Need for Speed The Run worked natively with Xbox controllers on Windows 11. Which it doesn't. This pauses our run for a moment while I did some Googling, and thankfully I was able to fix the issue, thanks to this fix posted on PC Gaming Wiki by Radishface. So thank you, Mr./Miss Face. This game would certainly be unplayable on keyboard. After escaping the mob, Jack teams up with his old childhood friend Sam, who is a fixer in San Francisco. She signs Jack up for The Run, the biggest race in the country. And, well, it starts pretty strong. The race kicks off in San Francisco, and it's pretty spectacular. The desperate chatter of cops weaving through the heavy traffic up and down the signature San Francisco hills. It's a tremendous start to proceedings. They wanted the vibe of a film, and they got it. Unfortunately, however, The Run does not always maintain its film-like presentation, thanks to the way the game presents its characters and rivals. Every single character in this story is introduced via text box. Jack, our hero, text box. Sam, the fixer, text box. Each and every single special rival, a text box. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a short cutscene that pervs on them a little bit, and then another text box. Now, not to say the limited info and interaction we get with these rivals is an automatic negative, but it's its execution which leaves a lot to be desired. Now, not to toot the horn for Most Wanted and Carbon too much, but these games do a lot with very little to create rivalries and personalities for its characters. A simple music track, some pictures, a bit of a montage, and then a text box. It's all about the theming and the vibe, a vibe of which the run struggles to maintain. The vibe and the UI of the game seems to be going for this sleek 2010s sort of vibe. And really, it's boring. It might as well be a UI picked out of a modern Call of Duty game. It's nothing. Unfortunately, the characters in the run seem to have captured the brunt of its half-baked development time. We meet some of these rivals multiple times throughout the game, with the final races actually being against people we've already met. But it would be easy to forget them, as all we get at the start of each rival race is the exact same paragraph we got earlier in the story, save for Nikki. Each rival we are presented with is like looking at a really interesting cardboard cutout. It looks great at first, but it doesn't take you long to realise there's no real depth. I don't mind the story of the run. It's very basic action movie. You get a few set pieces, some challenges, basic hero journey stuff. But unlike my Carbon Own the City video, I won't be going into much more detail. Because to be frank, there's really nothing to go into detail about. Jack needs money, some people try to stop him, he wins. Then they attempt to set up a sequel that will never happen. The run story is essentially a loose concept allowing it to jump from action set piece to location to action set piece. It feels like a half-baked trial run or demo of a real Need for Speed game. So, you've beaten the story of the run. What's next? Well, unfortunately, with the shutdown of the servers, no multiplayer options are really available anymore, which of course locks us out of some specific cars sadly, but there is the Challenge series of events. The Challenge series does effectively double the amount of content in the game. Each stage gets 5 extra Challenge series events, featuring all the event types from the main game. It also gives you a chance to play with the majority of the car list in the game, able to access tier 1, 2 and 3 cars as well as 4 and 5, and even some bonus events using tier 6 vehicles. I didn't get into it earlier, but the story of the run allows you only the chance to drive some Series 4 and 5 vehicles, the lower tiers of cars only appearing as opponents, having no chance to drive them yourself. Some events also allow you to unlock some pretty unique variants of cars, as well as unique cars such as the Lamborghini Siesto Elemento. Sadly for me, the Challenge series didn't hold my attention for too long. The campaign really runs out of steam on its way towards the end, and that really soured my opinion as I got towards the end of the game, and I did not have much drive to plug through these extra races. But I'm sure I will come back to them one day, thanks to the run's very solid handling system. Much like most of Black Box's Need for Speed games, it's very set on a grip-style handling. Drifting is pretty understated, unlike the current Need for Speed games, something I'm sure some younger gamers will find incredibly surprising. Cars do slide, but it is in a very controlled and sometimes feeling a little bit scripted manner. I find the handling very satisfying, whilst not always very challenging. Some of the high difficulty cars, such as the Shelby Super Snake, are still quite easy to weave through heavy traffic and around opponents. It is a very, very satisfying handling model. Cars, however, don't always handle jumps the best, and cars can feel very light in that way, catching air when it's really not needed. It's not too bad at the start of the game in environments such as San Francisco, but on the run out of Las Vegas and into New York, there are a few very obvious issues with the track design and terrain. But overall, I find the run to have some of the best and most fun handling in the series, putting it up there with the likes of the original Most Wanted and Most Wanted 2012. But what is a Need for Speed game without its car list? The car list of the run boasts a whopping 191 cars. However, this number is a bit misleading. Of the 191 cars, only 66 cars are really unique, with 66 base models, and then the rest of these being visual or other variants of these base cars. Then, minus the 6 PlayStation 3 exclusive cars and the 7 pre-order bonus cars, and you're left with 53 cars. And if you only play the run mode and don't unlock any cars in the challenge mode before playing the run, you're left with less than 10 whole cars on the base Xbox or PC version of the game. Like I said, you don't really use more than half of the cars that the game includes in the run mode. The opening of the game starts you off with a tier 4 car, and later you upgrade to a tier 5 car, never touching tiers 1, 2, 3, or 6 throughout the entirety of the story mode. Swapping through cars throughout the story mode is also quite clunky. Select gas stations in routes, and some story beats being the only easy way to swap cars. And during the gas stations, the amount of cars available to you is pretty dismal, like I said. Having not unlocked any extra cars in the challenge mode, you're kind of stuck with these cars. The cars available for you at tier 4 are not too bad, with a reasonable amount of variety initially, but when you do get to tier 5, if you haven't unlocked anything else, you have even fewer options. In this playthrough of the game, I tried to change cars as often as possible to give some variety to the footage. However, thanks to the clunkiness of swapping cars when they originally played this many years ago, I stuck almost entirely with the initial Mustang, only switching at story moments. The visuals of the run do hold up pretty well overall. For a game as old as it is, it still looks pretty great in a number of places. Weather effects and etc. look great, and the car models overall are pretty solid. Like I said, the run looks pretty great for its time. Environments like the Rockies, State Forest, and San Francisco pop with vibrant colours and great looking skies. The thunderstorm skies of the desert and the autumn leaves of the other stages really make you feel like you're crossing the vast American continent. And each environment does feel pretty visually unique, except for the city stages, which all kind of blend together a bit in my opinion. Chicago and New York are clearly different, but not different enough. But really, what good are these amazing looking environments and good visuals if it's just boring to drive along? Tracks and routes are fairly simple, mostly being high-speed runs, barring some technical sections like Chicago and the East Coast, as well as some that have hairpin, 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 right angle, hairpin. It's all pretty well foot to the floor weaving around. And, as I'm sure you're aware, tracks are also reused and reversed throughout the game. Despite the 10 stages and approximately 5 races per stage, the actual number of unique tracks is very disappointing. Yet another half-baked portion of the game, severely let down thanks to the crunch the devs were put under. I'm not the first person to point this out, and I won't be the last. Have a look online for some examples of these reused tracks, reversed, nighttime, daytime. It really gets a little tiring. It's something you don't notice too much on your first playthrough of the game, but if you have another crack or start playing the challenge mode, or just pay a bit more attention, you will start to notice it. And in my opinion, the game is also let down by its race types. Positions gained races, or standard sprint races, except all your opponents start ahead of you, so it's kind of like a chase the rabbit style, like a Gran Turismo game. Checkpoint races, which is pretty self-explanatory. Battle races, which are timed elimination races, however, you only track down one car at a time, also in a chase the rabbit style. You also have your rival races, which, despite touting rivals that are more advanced or skillful than your standard opponents, the experience remains much the same, with most opponents going down fairly easily in an almost scripted manner. Drag events, proper police pursuits, and drift events are all absent despite their earlier appearances in the series. I do understand their exclusion to a point. Thematically, they don't fit the concept of the run, but it does feel very disappointing where each stage fails to introduce more race types. Of the 10 stages of the run, they vary dramatically in terms of quality. The Rockies and its avalanche is a huge highlight for sure, but stages like East Coast, the Great Lakes, and the Chicago Approach are all duds, which is a surprising amount of duds for a game with only 10 stages. And the game never really fails to live up to the avalanche in terms of its scripted set pieces. The mob chase in the Great Lakes is a pretty terrible example of what they think a stunning cinematic moment is supposed to be. The gameplay of trying to dodge the enemy cars shooting at you and the helicopter shooting at you on boring roads where you have no free roam or no choice of where you're going is straight up not a good time. But enough about things that make the run bad. But why don't we talk about some positive aspects of it? One thing that I love about the run is the way that the camera moves around the cars. I've been playing a lot of Gran Turismo lately, and really the way the camera moves around the cars and shifts with heavy braking, tight corners, going over bumps and pulling in tight and pulling away from the car, it's a masterwork in my opinion. I feel like this is where the run is at its strongest. In a big Shelby Mustang, hard braking, weaving in and out of cars and around tight corners before jumping on the gas and boosting away. It's where the run really shows what it could have been and how it really could have been one of the best Need for Speed games ever. And despite the relative disappointment of the car list in my opinion, the cars they have chosen thankfully are all pretty great. Whilst the variants and style packs are a little boring in the ways that you can't fully customize your cars, they do a decent job of making sure each car feels reasonably visually unique. Furthermore, the rival cars throughout the story that you come across are all terrifically designed. Even the unnamed rivals, each one feels like a unique opponent who is trying to win this race just like you. All of the opponents' cars are pretty greatly designed in my opinion. Enough about what I think. What did everyone else think when the run came out? Well, it was received poorly, as I've already stated. Metacritic scores hover around the 60s, and the chief complaint being the game's length. The story takes just around 4.5 hours to beat, if you're slow. I was able to beat the story in just over 2 hours, which is a fine experience today as a short bit of fun and as an interesting little side note in the Need for Speed history. But in 2011, this being the mainline Need for Speed game for that year, the people demanded more. Unfortunately, it's pretty hard to experience the run nowadays. It has been delisted from all online storefronts, and this demands wannabe players buy secondhand copies online, buy keys from third-party sites, and that also secret third option, but I won't condone such practices. I set out to really figure out what's wrong with the run in this video and through my playthrough, and I think it's pretty clear to everyone that eventually plays it what the chief issue is. It's just too short, my total runtime being just over 2 hours, averaging around 15 minutes, sometimes less, for each of its 10 stages. You can't meaningfully customize the cars, and its car list is terribly affected by the structure of the career mode, with most players never even touching half of the vehicles in the game. They reuse tracks and environments, and the stunning cinema set pieces are few and far between. And some of their movie moments fall flat gameplay-wise, the escape the mob in the Great Lakes being a particularly bad section as I mentioned earlier. The ending of the game is a far cry from its beginning. Beginning in the bright sunny streets of San Francisco, cars weaving through traffic, speeding around cops with their chatter desperately calling for backup, it is all very engaging. This might as well be an entirely different game to the final stages of the run, which fall very flat. Racing through New York should be a finale, a spectacle, something spectacular, but instead it's just frustrating and nonsensical. Short, predetermined routes slam you into traffic with no way to get around them, bouncing through parks with no grip, getting reset by going slightly offline, and somehow having to outrun a train which is going faster than you are, no matter how fast you go. I'm no expert on trains, but I'm pretty sure the New York subway trains are not bullet trains and are not able to go faster than 250 kilometers an hour. All the final stages of the run do is solidify the disappointment and leave a bad taste in your mouth. The opening of the game feels perfectly scripted, like a movie scene fully coming together. The ending of the game's scripting is absurd and feels like a bad action movie. Like I said, trains going faster than they anywhere near realistically should, and your main rival, whatever his name is, I can't remember, speeding away to absurd speeds just to set you up for one final drag race, where conveniently they slow down and lose all their speed right before the end, making Jack easily win. We get lazily set up for a sequel that will never come, and the game is over. Spend a bit of time in the challenge series maybe, use some of those cars that never appeared in the story for you, and you're done. Lucky to get over 4 hours of gameplay out of the run. But at the end of the day, Need for Speed The Run is something I think all Need for Speed fans should experience. Sure, there's no car customization, but that does somewhat make you connect to the limited cars you use just a little bit more. Sure, it's short, but that helps make each location feel more unique, with the big set pieces standing out that little bit more. Sure, the story is a little bit wonky, but really, this is the time of Fast and Furious 5 and the early 2010s action movie boom. It hits the mark: action set pieces, explosions, drifting, problematic gratification of women. And how many other games have you outran an avalanche and taken down a helicopter in the same game? Like I keep saying, it's pretty clear what went wrong for Need for Speed The Run. Despite my enjoyment more than 10 years later after its release, the public did not gel with it. Less than 5 hours of gameplay, little customization, repeated tracks and routes, and all the other minor issues are hard to look past when buying a brand new game. 6s and 7s don't sell millions of copies, and unfortunately, it did not save Black Box from closure in 2013. Need for Speed The Run was the final full game created by Black Box, their final work being assisting Visceral Games on Battlefield Hardline. Black Box didn't deserve to go out like this. A company that created so many of my favourite games, and many others too, rushed to their early grave thanks to the demands of executives and their parent companies, their final work falling flat in the most disappointing ways. The Run is like the Fast and Furious 2 of Need for Speed games. The Battlefield Hardline, the Die Hard 4. It's like a big bag of original chips, fun to scarf down in the moment, but at the end you'll be sitting there thinking about what you could have had instead. Black Box created and worked on some of the best games of the 2000s and 2010s. 9 Need for Speed games, the Skate series, the best NBA Street game, Battlefield 3. But sadly, not even they could beat gaming's greatest evils: executives and deadlines. Need for Speed The Run has lots of issues, and that's okay. The Run is like a flawed masterpiece. If Da Vinci got halfway through the Mona Lisa and finished it with a crayon. Marred by its short development time and undercooked campaign, yet boasting one of the best handlings in the series and graphics that still hold up today. It's a game that truly showcases the very best and worst of the Need for Speed franchise. It's a 7 out of 10, and that's okay. If you can get a copy, it's well worth your time. Not that it'll take up much of it. Hello everyone, thank you for watching our second video on our Nostalgia Bait channel. Please like, subscribe, and do all that YouTube stuff if you want more videos like this. Did you play The Run? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Were you disappointed? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you want more stuff like this, go listen to the Nostalgia Bait podcast, hosted by myself and channel co-host Anastasia. We have a Need for Speed episode, and talking about Most Wanted and the movie. Like I said, please like, subscribe, there'll be more videos up on the channel soon, including the first video from Anastasia. We have lots more videos in the works, so please like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that other stuff, so you can be notified of when our new video comes out.